Hi, I'm David Miller, and this is the last in a series of 7 mini-lectures on Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. Today we're going to talk about the phenomenology of fairies. In the last mini-lecture, I described Shakespeare in A Midsummer Night's Dream as seeking a language for concepts not yet available to his culture and his moment in history. Let's use this idea and this outline to have a closer look at the language of Shakespeare's fairies and see what it's doing. The first fairy we meet, a generic figure whose speech prefix is simply fairy, tells Puck, "I serve the fairy queen to dew her orbs upon the green," and adds, "I must go seek some dewdrops here and hang a pearl in every cowslip's ear. Farewell, thou lob of spirits, I'll be gone. Our queen and all her elves come here anon." The must tells us that this fairy has a job, collecting and distributing dewdrops. If he or she, we don't know which, does have a name, it probably is Dewdrop. In some productions, including Max Reinhardt's wonderful 1935 film adaptation, from which I've shown you a number of images, the fairies are played by child actors. But even a child can't portray the scale evoked in such passages as this one. Almost every speech out of any fairy's mouth in this play acts out a contradiction between what the characters say and what they are. In this way, the play, line by line, scene by scene, offers us the experience of that contradiction between what we see and what we fleetingly imagine. Its imagery weaves enchantments that the staging can only dispel, playing out on another level the contrast between truth and fantasy that Theseus tries to adjudicate but ends up oversimplifying. Here, those enchantments include the richness and beauty of dewdrops transfigured into pearls, and pearls into earrings. Nature is humanized as the cowslips become pensioners, bodyguards with fancy uniforms, in a fantasy that fills its humanized nature with magical transformations. In a later passage, Titania tells her attendants to fan the moonbeams from Bottom's sleeping eyes, and for a moment we can almost see moonlight as half-substantial, a mist curling away in the moving air. Here is Titania, disposing her troops to wage war against bats and caterpillars and hold the owls at bay. It's all very official, literally so, in that the fairies have offices, which in Elizabethan usage doesn't mean workspaces, although it's funny to imagine the fairies returning to tiny cubicles in the forest. Instead, it means duties or jobs, although it rather dignifies the jobs by referring to them as official positions. The expanding dignity of the fairies' offices plays against the diminutive scale of the scenes envisioned, amusing and inventive in their detail, and against the mock specificity of Titania's orders. She allots her troops the third part of a minute to perform their tasks, as if the impulse to miniaturize were governing time as well as space, so that the fairies become as quick as they are small. This passage is typical of many, in the way it plays with comic discrepancies and disproportions of size, at the same time invoking a sense of efficiency and organization and the precision of its detail. Such passages are, in a way, showing off the work of the imagination, putting it on display for its own sake. The English Romantics were the first generation of poets and critics to pledge allegiance to the notion of poetic imagination, although, as I have suggested, something like such a notion is apprehended but not quite comprehended in the text and performance of this play and in other contemporary documents. In one of those amusing ironies that literary history is filled with, this was the same generation, the English Romantics, whose leading voices sometimes declared Shakespeare to be too poetic for the stage. Here is William Hazlitt, a major critic and essayist of the early 19th century, staking out such a position. It seems clear 2 centuries later that Hazlitt is missing the point. He is so ardent about the regions of fancy that he doesn't want them contaminated by reality, and so he fails to understand that the discrepancies he complains about are deliberate. They are the point. Oddly, he sees clearly that there's a connection between Shakespeare's staging of the fairies and the mechanical staging of Moonshine. It doesn't occur to him that the connection is deliberate. He thinks he's figured it out. It's even more ironic that Hazlitt, in his defense of poetry against the stage, winds up sounding so much like Theseus, to whom poetry is merely fantasy, and theater just a way to kill time. Look at Puck's job description, and you'll see that it perfectly fits the Duke's description of what imagination does. If it would but apprehend some joy, he said, it comprehends some bringer of that joy. Although Puck is not a bringer of joy, but of mishap. In this speech, he's as much as telling us that he's a made-up figure, a bit of English folklore. Still, simply by being what he is, Puck brings out the latent irony of that formula, for he has exactly the same degree of reality, no more, no less, than Theseus himself does. All of this happens on a very small scale in the details of the play's language and imagery. Perhaps that's the proper scale in which to view a reality so rapid and minuscule as that of the fairies. But as Hazlitt almost saw, the very same discrepancy is played for broad laughs in the Mechanicals' production of Pyramus and Thisbe. The effect is subtle when Titania speaks of waving moonbeams from sleeping eyes, and it's anything but when the Mechanicals develop a strategy for bringing moonshine indoors. They use an actor with a lantern to play the role. But there's an underlying similarity between the two moments, for they both play on the discrepancy between moonshine as image and as reality. So the play doesn't just offer us a fantasy, it lets us experience the odds between fantasy and everyday reality. It offers us this experience in a highly concentrated, intensified form that is itself neither mere fantasy nor mere reality. We may see a final example of this in the first scene of Act 4. About halfway through this scene, Theseus enters with Hippolyta and his entourage. Since they are in the forest, Theseus wants her to hear the music of my hounds echoing in the valley, a very specific kind of auditory effect that, if you think about it, could never be reproduced on a 16th century stage. Still, this moment does offer a valuable life lesson, especially for you ladies now. How do you know when a guy's getting serious? Forget the family. It's when he wants you to meet his dogs. How does Hippolyta respond? As always, her lines are finely balanced between resistance and acquiescence. She remembers the sweet thunder of the Spartan hounds unleashed by Hercules and Cadmus once when they cornered a bear in a wood of Crete. Now, the subtext here may be as simple as, "Oh, that sounds like a nice thing to do. I remember how fantastic it was when we did something like that in Crete one time." But the subtext may just as easily be, "I bet your hounds won't be as impressive as the ones Hercules showed me. Never did I hear such gallant chiding as the baying of those hounds." Theseus does seem to be responding to that subtext in the defensive tone of his reply. "Oh, yeah, well, my hounds are Spartan too, you know. They're dewlapped like bulls. Those are the hounds of a manly man." He concludes, "Judge when you hear," confirming that the spectacle has taken on a competitive edge. At this moment, the party stumbles upon the sleeping lovers, and it's clear that we've heard as much of the hound's music as we're going to. Like Cowslip's ears, the music is there and not there, reverberating through the lines that describe in rolling and lilting syllables what cannot be heard with human ears in a wooden theater. "My hounds are bred out of the Spartan kind, so flewed, so sanded, and their heads are hung with ears that sweep away the morning dew, crook-kneed and dew-lapped like Thessalian bulls, slow in pursuit, but matched in mouth like bells, each under each. A cry more tunable was never hollowed to nor cheered with horn in Crete, in Sparta, nor in Thessaly." If flowers did have ears, I think we can safely say that those syllables and the unheard melodies they evoke are the sounds the flowers would hear.